and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2021 action movie sequel, F9, The Fast Saga, or indeed simply Fast and Furious 9, as it is also known. The 9th installment in the main Fast and Furious series, and the 10th official movie in the Fast and Furious franchise overall, with Justin Lin returning to the director's chair once again after directing the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th entries in the series. So, as a disclaimer, as I've done with all of the movies in this series, as this franchise has progressed, it has started to weave this more interconnected web, as I've said, and so I may give some spoilers for this film and others in the Fast and Furious franchise, so please do switch off now if you don't want to hear any plot details for these films at all. But please do come back, though, when you've watched the films, and do let me know what you thought. I am always so very interested to know. And I do know that this movie is fairly new at the time of this review, and I usually do, for such films, I usually do try and avoid spoilers where I can, but there's just that much going on in and around this movie that I can't promise I can avoid it on this occasion, you know? Following on from the end of the last movie, 2017's Fate of the Furious, we catch up with Dominic Dom Toretto, as played by Vin Diesel, and his wife Letty, as played by Michelle Rodriguez, living a quiet life, with Dom's son, Brian, out in the country when they are visited by some old friends, namely Roman Pierce, as played by Tyrese Gibson, Tej Parker, as played by Chris Ludacris Bridges, and Ramsey, as played by, and I can never say her name, Nathalie Emmanuel. We'll leave it at that. We learn that the fate of the world is once again at stake. Well, of course, it would be, wouldn't it, you know? With a device this time round that can cause worldwide devastation to anything electronic. And our adrenaline-fueled petrol heads are the only thing that can once again stand in their way. Reluctant to help at first, something spooks Dom back into the fight, and soon they are back risking everything to ensure the device doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Along the way, we team up with friends from their past, of course, tapping into a number of the previous films, as well as facing off a formidable new enemy which sees Dom having to face events in his past, putting his family ethos to the test through and through, and bringing his story round full circle. What starts out as a simple retrieval mission soon twists and turns into one transecting the globe as our team of unlikely heroes put the pedal to the metal one more time. So, going into this movie was, admittedly, quite an emotional journey for us as a family too. Not only did it mark the return of us to the cinema together, which was simply amazing, although technically this was the second film both me and Leslie had actually been to see at the cinemas from when they opened up in the UK this year. The first one being Quiet Place 2. But again, we never went to go see that as a family. So this time Oliver came, we made a bit of a family thing of it, and so on and so forth. And again, not only to see the continuation of one of the few franchises that we love, but it was also pretty much the only upcoming film that Leslie's dad had been looking forward to watching. Sadly, Leslie's dad passed away in February this year following a long battle with leukemia, and had stated on a number of occasions that his one hope was to live to see this film come out. Sadly, what with a number of delays and indeed the closure of cinemas in the United Kingdom and pretty much around the world due to COVID, he never got to see out his wish. So, we had already made a beeline to see this film as soon as it came out in his honour, and one of the reasons why I actually started doing this series in the first place. And that made this specific trip to the cinema ever the more poignant. We had more than one tear in our eyes, I can tell you that. Now, we all still had a blast with this movie, out and out, absolutely. However, I must admit, I do think gravity took a few days off when they were filming this, you know, as some of the stunts pulled by Dom and his team, as absolutely awesome as they were some of the most out of control, over the top and totally impossible that we have seen in this series to date. And this movie was once again chock full of them. I also think that for what it was, ultimately a mission to search for and obtain a series of objects faster than the bad guy plot, most of it was, the plot was unnecessarily overcomplicated, I think. Now, I understand why this was. It was pulling in so many threads at the same time to make sense of everything being thrown at us, you know? Sometimes it did feel a little saturated and perhaps a little bit eager to please. Some of the ideas in the film do seem like a cheap cop-out as a result, you know? Basically kind of flim-flamming from one scenario to another to bring back and remove characters at will. So much so that it's not really a shock anymore. You know, no matter how much the film wants to try and make us believe that it is. I mean, Dom seems to have more family coming out the woodwork than a colony of termites. And even Han is resurrected once again. All right, well, I suppose for the first time since they messed with the timeline in the early installments to make everything fit. But in essence, you know, he's back from the grave once again. I mean, it does work and it does make sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm just being a little bit cynical perhaps with regards to that. I don't go into a Fast and Furious movie and expect all the hatches to be battened down, you know? Far from it. And this did not disappoint. It was fantastic popcorn fodder, as indeed many of the movies in this franchise are. And for sure, exactly the type of film I go to the cinema for. In this respect, it was absolutely spot on. The cast were on top form again, particularly Gibson. He was absolutely spot on as Roman once again. He's basically been consistent throughout this entire series. And he really did bring it in every sense of the scene that he was in. The action carried the movie forward for sure, but Gibson brought some welcome relief in bucketfuls. And I would go as far as to say as that he made this movie this time around. He literally stole the scene with his one-liners, his quirky attitude, you know, whenever he was actually on the screen. It was great to see most of the original cast return, obviously with a few new faces, and at least one we had thought we had lost. I mean, not everybody obviously returns. There's obviously one poignant loss that we suffered, you know, during the course of the seventh one, namely Paul Walker, of course. But we did get to see a number of the cast return from the third movie in the series too, 2006's Tokyo Drift, which has kind of been the linchpin of this series as it's been unfolding. You know, this had been tipped for quite some time, but I must admit, I did actually find it a little bit disappointing that we would introduce the crew from Tokyo Drift, something that I had been looking forward to ever since it was tipped, only to have them basically drive not a single car. And that did seem quite odd. The way the movie starts is almost like a movie within itself. The action is relentless, and it's hard to see how they didn't use all of their budget just in that moment alone. The movie then kind of wanes somewhat. It does a little bit when we kind of start to unravel Dom's past and kind of pad around the events of the previous movies as a result, you know, to kind of fill in the filler again. But then, bam, literally the final act. I mean, it veers on the side of science fiction in many ways. We've kind of been going there with this series, haven't we? But you do get the feeling that they are really clutching at straws to do out and out dumb stunts in all of the previous movies combined. But it's big, dumb, it is loud and eccentric fun, you know? Does it always make sense? No. Not by a long shot. But it certainly has fun with itself. And in that, to finish, I just want to talk about the elephant in the room that many, I am sure, will have either heard if you haven't seen the movie, or you will know of if you've seen the movie. The fact that if you've heard anything about this movie, I am sure you will know it does involve an excursion into space. So, now, Jason's been out to space, Leprechaun's travelled there, and even Bond has had a go. So indeed, why not the Fast and Furious gang, I ask? It is probably time that we saw Roman Pierce freaking it all the way into space. And indeed, one could easily say this movie perhaps is the moonraker of the Fast and Furious franchise. And to be fair, they did have the right person on board to complete the mission. It was indeed ludicrous, you know? But do you know what? Yes, it was surreal. And no, I don't even think Elon Musk would stand a chance of getting a car into space. Well, at least not anytime soon. But you know what? It was done in its own kind of tongue-in-cheek way that made it almost a parody of itself. They were having a laugh with the concept, you know, and you could tell that, and that I can really appreciate. But yes, it did seem one of the silliest things that they could have done. Badding, as I'm sure I've read in lots and lots of reviews, I think the only place many people are thinking that this series has got left is to go into another dimension. Hey, we've got F10 and F11 coming up soon. Overall, you know, this movie would probably rank as one of the most nonsensical of the series to date. And for the Fast and Furious franchise, that is pretty much saying something, you know? But I never went into this thinking it was going to be anything else. They have been steadily getting more ridiculous as they go. And do you know what? A lot more fun in the process. Crossing the boundaries between a Mission Impossible movie and a Bond, you know, the Series V is ever more into this spy genre, and we're clasping onto a number of new plot threads which twist and turn events in earlier installments, which did make this movie feel a little overcomplex for what it needed to be. Admittedly, it might be way over the top. In fact, it's out of this world. But it's great to have such a high-stakes, loud, non-apologetic movie to get engrossed in once in a while. And this is just the ticket, you know? It is simply just out for a great time. Never takes itself too seriously, and in that most certainly lies its charm. The action set pieces are more than worth it. That and Tyrese Gibson's fantastic one-liners, you know? So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having here at SciFirst MovieTalk, and would definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.